This whole thing of black kids taken and put into white homes and you're claiming that it's not help, because white kids that are deviant or they are being neglected in their houses. I mean, how many of them are being put into black homes? How many of them? Because majority of the time, every time a social worker is called to intervene where a black child is being neglected, the next thing they think of is a white family. But when a social worker is called when a white child is being neglected, or you think of, oh, the white child must have a relative, or the white child, know a white family that will be able to take care of that child. But you don't know a black family that can take care of a black child. You only know by a white family, and that's the narrative that we blacks have to erase. Because a lot of this, our black kids that are ending up in foster home, they suffer a lot from identity crisis. They are not getting the privileges that they might write out there. But the truth is that they are not getting those things, and the bad thing is that. Hey guys, welcome back to Analysis with Janet. Yeah, you're allowed to share your thoughts, your opinion in whatever thing we're talking about, but always remember that as you share your thoughts and your opinion, be respectful as you do it. Yes, so guys, so today we are going to be talking about black kids being slave traded in the Swedish system. Yes, I said it, and you might wonder, do they still slave trade people in this modern age? Yes, there's still modern day slavery, still modern day slave trading going. I know back then when we talked about slave trading, it was a white person buying a black person and using it to work in his farms or something like that. But there's still also slave trading going on today, and the slave trading today is mostly done in the welfare, and you might wonder how, but I'm going to get that into a minute. And I just want to say this whole thing of black kids taken from, when a black child, you think that a black child is neglected in a black home, you take and put in a white home. That is wrong, because I tell you something, I've always said this: if you think that a black child is being neglected in his or her home, you can start by looking for a relative. And if you don't have a relative, or you cannot find a relative, or there's no relative, you can look for other black homes, because there are other decent black families that can do the job. Don't take a black child that has grown up with a black culture, with an African culture, with everything, you put into a white home, and then you claim how, oh, I've helped that child, because that's what is going on in Sweden. And that's what I mean by black kids being slave traded in the Swedish system. Because here in Sweden, I've seen cases where a child has gone to school, and maybe the school has called the social department saying that child is being neglected at home, and then that child is taken from the child's biological family, and then they put that child into a Swedish home. And then when you want to, because I've had this conversation so many times to Swedish people, and then when you want to tell them that that's wrong, just because you think that a child is being neglected at home, or in the child's biological house or home or whatever, you cannot take that child, that black child that has grown up with a black culture and everything, and put in a Swedish home and say you're helping that child. That's wrong, because the Swedish people that you're giving that child to, how much do they know about the African culture? How much do they know about the black culture? So at the end of the day, you're creating identity crisis. A lot of black kids that grow up in white homes, they tend to have a lot of identity crisis, because they don't know where they belong. One minute they feel like, I'm a black person, the next minute they feel like they're a white person. Sometimes they even get in between, they get stuck. I've seen that a lot. I have friends here in Sweden that grew up in foster homes, and I see how they struggle a lot with their identity. I see how they struggle a lot to fit in. One minute you see them feeling like, oh, I'm a black person. The next minute you see them struggling to fit into the Swedish society. This whole thing of black kids taken and put into white homes and you're claiming that it's not help, because how many white kids that are deviant, or they are being neglected in their houses? I mean, how many of them are being put into black homes? How many of them? Because majority of the time, every time a social worker is called to intervene where a black child is being neglected, the next thing they think of is a white family. But when a social worker is called when a white child is being neglected, or you think of, oh, the white child must have a relative, or the white child, know a white family that will be able to take care of that child. But you don't know a black family that can take care of a black child. You only know by a white family. And that's the narrative that we blacks have to erase, because a lot of this, our black kids that are ending up in foster home, they suffer a lot from identity crisis. They are not getting the privileges that they might write out there. You might think, oh my God, they're getting everything that's put out there, but the truth is that they are not getting those things. And the bad thing is that those kids end up with a lot of identity crisis, a lot of confusion. They don't know where their life is. They're not prepared for life, because those kids are used as paychecks. They're just some paychecks given to the government gives to the white people to enrich themselves. I've seen that here a lot in Sweden, and I know it's not only in Sweden. I've also heard the same thing that's going on too in America. I've heard that. I've read articles and listened to people talk about how foster care is affecting a lot of black kids too in America. Let me tell you something. Even here in Sweden, as I've seen instances where in Sweden, where a child has gone to school, and maybe the school has called the social department and that child has been neglected. And then when the system comes in, instead of the system trying to figure out why the black family is neglecting the child, they immediately just seize the child from the black family and then put into a Swedish home. And I've also seen cases where, and it's not even a case, I'll give you an example, and I want to share this an example. This is a real story that happened to me. I used to work as a caregiver here, and I used to work that I had a Swedish colleague. I didn't know that. So I remember this one time I was working and I had to exchange my night shift because I had something to do. I couldn't work the night shift. So I was asking a lot of my colleagues that if somebody wants to exchange their the exchange or take my night shift. And as I was asking, I was talking to one of my colleagues and I was telling her how I'm having a hard time exchanging my night shift with somebody to take the night shift. And if nobody's gonna take the night shift, I might just call the boss and call in sick because I don't know what to do next. And then I said to my colleague, I said, maybe I should ask one of my Swedish colleagues, but I'm not really close to the lady because we don't often work together. So I'm not really close to her. And then my colleague that I was talking to, she's close to the Swedish lady. So she was like, and I was asking her, maybe you should help me ask her if it's okay for her to exchange or take my night shift or something like that. And you know what my colleague said to me? Oh, the Swedish lady doesn't work the night shift. I'm like, why is it that she doesn't work the night shift? And she's like, oh, you don't know what happened. I was like, what happened? And she said, let me tell you something, Janet. Because when her child went to school, they called the social department on her child, saying that her child's been neglected. The child comes to school, the child's not done the assignment, the child looks very unkempt, the child's always sleeping in class. It's like the child doesn't get enough rest at home. So they called the social department, and then the social department sat down with her and they spoke to her and they discovered that the reason why her child's over being neglected is because she's overworking. And like I said, if you're working as a caregiver here in Sweden, you know that you make more money when you work the night shift than when you work during the day. So most people want to work more of the night shift than the daytime shift because there's not a lot of money. The night shift, they pay you some extra money comes in and things like that. So the extra allowances are coming with the night shift. And because she was working a lot of the night shift and she's a single Swedish woman with her kids, so she couldn't be able to like be at work and help her child at home and things like that. So you know what they did? They told her that she's not going to work the night shift. On the contrary, the government is going to pay her extra. So the extra money that she's supposed to get from her night shift, she's not going to get. She's going to stay at home, and then the government will put extra money into her salary. So that way it can help her to spend more time with her child, so she can help her child do assignments, she can help her child do a lot of things. That's why she doesn't work the night shift. And I remember standing there and I was studied, I was confused. I was like, what? I was like, so, and I never knew that the whole time because you're working with so many colleagues, so you don't pay attention to what a lot of people do. You just focus on your own shift and just do your own shift and leave. And I remember when I came home and I narrated the story to my mom, I said, you see the difference in the Swedish health, in the Swedish system. When a white woman, when the school calls the social department and complain that she's neglecting her child, they sit down, they figure out what the problem is, and they help her. But when it's a black woman, the Swedish schools call the social department to complain that she's neglecting her child. They seize her child. So at the end of the day, all you're using is taking that black woman's predicament and her child to take advantage of. And the bad thing is that those black kids that have been seized, they are being sent to a Swedish home, and then when you want to explain to the Swedes that that's wrong, they'll tell you how the child's going to get a better life in a Swedish home. What better life? Look, all of us want our parents to be rich, but because our parents are not rich doesn't mean we're going to throw them away. We're not going to want to associate with them. Yes, Swedish people might be rich because it's their country, they have opportunities, but yes, but doesn't mean that a child, just because I'm a black child in Sweden, doesn't mean I'm going to neglect. I'm not going to want to live with my mom or my family because they're poor. So if a white woman, they call the social worker that she's neglecting her child, and you can give her an opportunity to get her life together. Why don't you do the same thing with black women here in Sweden? Because that's the question I've been asking a lot of the Swedish social workers here in Sweden. Because I'll tell you something, in every 10 black women here in Sweden, 8 of them would tell you that Swedish social workers have come to take their kids, that they're neglecting their kids. And then inside that 8 of them, 5 of them, their kids have at least been taken away from them. And then you ask them, so did they even try to help you out, or to figure out how they can help you so you can get on track? They're like, they didn't do anything. All I know is that I went to school, I dropped my child at school, and I came back to want to pick up my child. They told me how they've taken my child from me because they say I'm neglecting my child. And then when I went to the social department to try to explain myself, they called the police to throw me out because they say they have nothing to say to me. I don't have anything to say to the social worker. But let me ask something. Isn't not the motto of social works is to help vulnerable and oppressed? Is that not what the motto of social work stands for? And how do you help a vulnerable and oppressed? By having several interviews, several meetings with them to try to figure out where the problem is coming from. But that opportunity is not given to a lot of black women here in Sweden. A lot of black women here in Sweden, their kids are just automatically seized from them the minute there's a complaint. So you just seize a black child from the mother, and then you dump into a Swedish home. And even during the time when that child is put in a Swedish home, they don't even care to go and talk to the black mother to figure out, okay, what happened? Why are you neglecting your child? They don't even. I've met a lot of black women here in Sweden that their kids have been taken, and I asked them, so when the Swedish government took your child from you, what help have they given you? Because they're supposed to send you to a course. They're supposed to send you to go and get better if you're having any issues, so you can get back your child. And they're like, they haven't done anything. Instead, when I go to the social office to try to explain myself or ask them what's going on, they call the police to throw me out. So indirectly, that's slave trading, because then you have just seized a black woman's child, given to a white Swedish woman, pretending that you're helping that child by claiming how that child is fit more in the Swedish home. And then that black woman that you're claiming that she's toxic, you should have helped that woman, because that's what your job is supposed to be. For the time when that child is in that Swedish home or whatever foster home that child is, you're supposed to make sure that you help that woman to get back on track. They do that with their own Swedish women. I'm not going to dispute that. I've seen Swedish women that they've called that they're neglecting their kids, and they've been given second chances. But how many black women in Sweden have been given second chances when it comes to that, like Sweden? How many? Because I know a lot of black women here that their kids have been taken away from them. Some of them, because they don't want their kids to be taken away from them, they quickly take their kids back to Africa, because they know the minute they take your child from you, they will not give you any help. They'll keep writing how you're the worst mother on earth. But she's the worst mother. Don't you want to help her? Have you tried to help her? Have you done any attempts to want to see, okay, what's the problem? You haven't done any of those things. And the bad thing is that when those kids turn 18 in those foster homes, they are thrown out there. I have like 2 friends of mine that grew up in a foster home. And I tell you something, they have zero contact with their foster mothers. After they turn 18, their foster mothers told them to leave. They had to go to the social department. From the social department, they had to start moving up and down. Till today, those 2 friends of mine, they're having a hard time getting their lives together. And I see how the struggle, and that has to do with the fact that they were taken from their biological parents, because they said their parents were neglecting them, to a Swedish home. Those Swedish home that you put those kids, Swedish government, how many of those Swedish foster mothers, of Swedish foster parents have contact with those kids? How many of them? The minute those kids turn 18, they throw those kids on the streets. They don't even care how those kids are feeling. Let me ask you guys a question. How many mothers have thrown their kids on the street, or thrown their kids out of their house because the kids are 18? How many? Because I know a lot of mothers that will be like, you know what, I have to prepare my child. Even though my child's 18, I have to make sure that my child has a job. I have to make sure my child has an apartment. That's what real mothers do. So if you're going to say a biological mother of a child cannot do that thing, and you give that child to a foster mother, and a foster mother doesn't do it, what was the point of taking that child from the biological mother? Because that's the thing I've been asking the Swedish government. What was the point? So the point was that you just wanted to use that child to enrich a Swedish family. Because I'll tell you something, one foster child in Sweden costs 30,000 Swedish crowns a month. Yes, one. So every person that has a foster child in Sweden, at least every month they get a salary of 30,000 Swedish crowns, claiming to take care of those kids. And if you look at how statistics are shown in Sweden, I'll tell you something, a lot of those kids, they end up in correctional centers here in Sweden, because when you send an adult at the age of 18 out there that you have not prepared that adult, definitely that adult is going to start doing a lot of things that that adult is not supposed to do, and sooner or later that adult will get his or herself in trouble. And then when that adult gets his or herself in trouble, you bring statistics showing how immigrants, black people, are more likely to commit crimes in Sweden. But then again, let's meet those criminals, let's talk to them. How did you go from being somebody that was born with everything, or thinking that you're in the right track, to one morning becoming a criminal? How did that all happen? It all happened because, you know why? When you took that black child from that black child's family, why did you not find a relative? Why did you not find a black family to put that child? Why didn't you do that? Because you never wanted to help that child. All you wanted to do was take this child's predicament to enrich a Swedish person, to give a Swedish person a favor to become rich. And now, when the child to live at the age of 18, that the child has no job, has no salary, has no income. How do you want that child to take care of his or herself? How do you want that individual to take care of his or herself out there? How do you want that, Sweden? And then at the end of the day, when they start committing crimes, you're like, oh my God, immigrants, black people are more likely to commit crimes in Sweden. No, you created a monster in them. I've been saying that to the Swedes, that you created a monster in them. Swedish social workers are so quick into seizing black kids and slave trading into Swedish homes, and then they'll sit there and tell you how they have given the child a future because the child is living in a rich community where it's made up of rich sweets. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just because you take a child from a poor community and put in central Stockholm where there are a lot of rich people, doesn't mean you have helped that child. That child is not looking for riches. You don't. No, seriously, I've heard that I've seen social workers say that here in Sweden. The child lives now in central Stockholm where it's rich. I'm like, and so what? You think I don't wish my parents were rich? You think I don't wish my parents were the richest people on earth? But they are not. Doesn't mean I'm going to abandon them and go and look for a rich parent to live with. Have you looked at if that home is safe? Have you looked at how that child is going to cope in it? Have you looked at the cultural aspect? Have you looked at all those things? You're taking a black child and claiming how the child, because the child grew up in a poor community in Sweden, in Stockholm, now you're putting the child in a rich community in Stockholm, makes the child solving the issue. It doesn't solve the issue. It doesn't. On the contrary, it creates more confusion, because that child growing up in that poor community has friends. has relatives, has loved ones that care about that child. In the rich community, that child knows nobody. It's made up of sweets. The child will have a hard time making friends because the child has to fit in. And sometimes because of the way the child looks, it's going to be difficult for the child to fit in. Also, that child doesn't have relative friends in those places. The child has to make all those things. So how have you helped that child? How have you helped that child? So you haven't helped that child. What you have done is taken advantage of that child's predicament or of that family's predicament to enrich another family to become richer. And that's the narrative that white people have been doing for a very long time. And Swedish social workers are good at it in Sweden. They are good at doing that thing. They don't really care. You just take a black child and dump in the Swedish home and you claim how you have helped that child. It's wrong. It is wrong. We need to end that, black people. We need to stop. We need to start fighting against that because your kids, our black kids are suffering from it and they're suffering heavily from it. And we might not see it now, but in the future, that's when we see it. And maybe by then it's also too late to fix a lot of things. So guys, that was it for today. And like I said, guys, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. And as you share your thoughts, please remember to be polite and respectful. Like I always say, yeah, we analyze everything together, but we also need to be respectful as we do it together. Remember. So guys, yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye, guys.